Over the years, I've introduced D&D to tons of people, friends, family, really anyone who would listen. And I've been pretty successful at getting lots of my friends to play as characters in the games that I dungeon master. But when I talk to my players about maybe switching to the other side of the screen, they get nervous. Maybe you're the same way. You're a player who's thinking about DMing for the first time, or maybe you're brand new to Dungeons & Dragons, and you want to start in the Dungeon Master's Eldritch Chair. But you look around at the example of DMs around you, and you think, me, try DMing. You want me in charge of all that. It's easy to get the impression that being a Dungeon Master is being captain of a ship called fun, and you have to build and maintain and sail that ship all by yourself. But DMs are responsible for a lot less than it appears. I mean, we like to pat ourselves on the back for a fun time, but here's the secret. Half the fun comes from the rules themselves. Grabbing a handful of dice and rolling them all for your fireball damage is fun. Everyone at the table holding their breath, watching the rogue make his dexterity check to see if he can pickpocket the prison guard is fun. And as long as you have a passing familiarity with the rules, which you can get for free anytime online, there's a link in the description, and you stick to those rules, then the fun things like that are going to happen all the time. And beyond that, most of the fun comes from the adventure that you're running. If you're using a well-written adventure, then you're guaranteed a thrilling scenario filled with exciting combat and dangerous dungeons, all the ingredients you need to generate one-of-a-kind, you-had-to-be-there stories. So really, being a Dungeon Master is more like being captain of a ship that's already built for you. A ship made out of rules, shaped by the adventure, and crewed by your players. All you have to do to set sail for adventure is man the helm and catch the winds of your imagination. And in one sense, it's just that easy. But if that were truly everything, you wouldn't be getting seasick at the thought of giving it a try. And I understand. As I've tried to get my friends to DM over the years, I've heard the same handful of worries over and over in response. In fact, I started keeping track of them on what I call my DM screen of anxiety. Odds are you share some of these concerns. So why don't we go over them, and I'll address each one so that you can feel ready and maybe even excited to DM. Starting with knowing enough rules. Lots of people look at the size of this book, and they get intimidated. They think, I have to know all of this to DM? And I did just tell you a moment ago you need to be familiar with the rules, but the key word there is familiar. You don't need to know everything in order to run the game. These are not your study guide, they're your reference material. They're here for you. When you don't know a rule, you can look it up. You'd do the same thing if you were playing Settlers of Catan and you forgot whether roads can go past a settlement of a different color or not. For the record, they can't, Dylan. Don't worry about knowing everything. You can always look up a rule when you need it. And if you don't have the time in the moment to look it up, or you don't know exactly where it is in the rules, you as the DM have the power to set a temporary ruling and say, you know what, it's going to work like this for now, and when we have the time later on, we'll find the real rule and we'll switch to that. All right, that's one anxiety down. Next one is using the right adventure. Earlier I said half the fun comes from the adventure, which prompts the question, what adventure do I use? And there are tons of starter adventures out there for you to cut your pointy little goblin teeth on. Which adventure you choose is going to depend on what excites you and your players. The big recommendation you're going to see online is for the Lost Mine of Phandelver, which is the starter adventure that comes in the D&D starter kit. And it's recommended for good reason. It's a solid module, and it comes with sidebars filled with information specifically for first-time DMs. If you're going to run this adventure, I would recommend that you don't commit to the whole thing from the start. Maybe just decide to do the Goblin Cave at the beginning and some of the in-town quests and see how you feel from there. But yeah, it's good stuff. You might also try one of the starting adventures for 3rd edition, the Sunless Citadel. This adventure got a 5th edition update in the Tales from the Yawning Portal book, and it's filled with that old school dungeon crawl feel. It is a very linear adventure, focused entirely on the shady stronghold itself, which means as a DM, you're never going to have to spin more than 1 or 2 plates at a time. This might be very appealing for you. It might feel very restrictive for others. If you decide to run the Overcast Castle, you should know that it uses the standard experience rules for leveling up. So if you use the milestone rules, you should level up your PCs to level 2 after they've beaten the Hobgoblin Chief, and level 3 when they finished the adventure. Both of those adventures are official offerings from Wizards of the Coast, which means they both cost money. If you're short on coin, then I would recommend The Temple of the Basilisk Cult by Kelsey Dione. This is a quick 1 or 2 session adventure which centers around an excursion to the titular temple. The adventure is laid out quite differently than how Wizards of the Coast does things, but it's all in service of giving you easy access to the information you need to run a particular encounter or scene. This is intended to obviate the need to read the adventure at all before running it, but I would advise you do so anyway. It's always a good idea to get a general shape of the adventure before running it. Plus, it gives you the opportunity to think ahead about how you might frame and introduce the various encounters of the adventure to your players as they run into them. But maybe you're DMing because you have an idea for an adventure that you want to bring to life. What if you want to put something together on your own? How do you make sure that it's good? Well, I could do an entirely separate video on that topic. And honestly, I should. You know what? I'm going to put that on my to-do list. I'll put a link right here and in the description when I've got it finished. Make first adventure video. Moving on, we have things going off the rails. A lot of adventures are written more or less as stories that the DM takes the players on. Stories that will inevitably get derailed, so the adventure is full of ways to get things back on track. This is an awful way to write an adventure, not the least of which because it's impossible to guess everything that a PC might do, and your PCs are almost guaranteed to do something that the adventure hadn't accounted for. But even when you're running an adventure that's been written smartly and flexibly, occasionally your players are going to gleefully tear past the limits of what's been prepared for you. Maybe you dread that moment. Well, dread not, because there are 2 things I can give you that you can always do in a situation like that, and both of them are powered by the most powerful tool you have in your arsenal: your imagination. The first thing you can do is reuse or repurpose stuff from elsewhere in the adventure. If your PCs are wandering deep into the forest, far away from the underwater lake dungeon that the adventure is centered around, well, find a random encounter table somewhere in the adventure, pull an encounter from that, and just toss it at them. Or go to the appendix and build an encounter yourself from the monsters there. You can even use your improvised encounter to point the PCs back towards the main action of the adventure if you include some kind of clue in the encounter. The PCs are attacked by bandits. After they're defeated, looking through the bodies, they find a jar with a sprite in it. The sprite lives in the lake with the dungeon of the adventure, and she can lead the PCs there. The second thing you can always do is make something up, whole cloth. You're the DM, master of the universe. Whole cities can rise and crumble on your word. Nothing so much as breathes without your consent. God is dead, and you sit on his throne now! So you have a degree of creative freedom there. Though I suspect that making something up on the spot is exactly what you're afraid you'll have to do. But here's where D&D's setting works towards its advantage. Default Dungeons & Dragons is generic brand Fantasyland, and it's filled with all of the tropes that you're no doubt familiar with from pop culture. If you ever get to a point where the adventure doesn't have any answers for you, steal, shamelessly, from those tropes.
Is there like a wizard nearby that can identify this magic item we just found?
Oh yeah, he lives in a tower. A tower on the edge of an ancient forest.
What sort of wizard is he?
He is a transmutation wizard. He's trying to create a philosopher's stone so that he and his wife can live forever. Cool. What's his name? Dan Wizard. Dan Wizard? Yeah, I kind of ran out of creativity there. I will admit, Sometimes none of that is going to be enough, and you are just going to need more time to make something up. And if that happens, just ask your players for that time. They're going to be happy to give it to you. They're going to be excited to be playing something brand new and unique to them. It's one of the chief joys of D&D. So when all else fails, ask for the time you need to make something up. All right? What's next? NPC anxieties. As Dungeon Master, you're responsible for playing all the non-player characters in your game, which can be an intimidating prospect. A common piece of advice here is to play with your voice or play out some kind of quirk when playing the NPC at the table. The merchant says, "Ah, that'll be 6 copper." For some people, this sounds like fun. Other people flash back to throwing up during their middle school talent show their mom forced them to do. If you're closer to the latter camp, you can always describe the action of a scene instead of playing it out. The merchant says, "Aye, that'll be 6 copper." When he talks, he sounds like a bag of gravel come to life. Quirks and voices help add color and distinguish your NPCs from one another, but there's ways to include them in the game without putting yourself on stage. But here's the real secret to NPCs. NPCs really come alive when your players think they know what an NPC wants, and they can use that information to relate to them, communicate with them, and predict their behavior. If you can take just a moment in every scene to give each NPC a goal and have them take actions to meet those goals, then suddenly your players are regarding your NPCs as real characters with agency. Funny voices not required. And the last anxiety, or the last important one anyway, I'll be bad at it. This one is kind of just all the other anxieties wrapped up into one, isn't it? You're trying something new, and you know that trying new things always comes with a chance of failure. I hope that at this point, you feel better about your ability to DM and to have fun while doing it. But if not, maybe this story of a game that I played in will help. Proof that a DM can knock it out of the park on their first try. Our first timer grabbed her handbooks and a pre-written adventure, and we all sat down to play. Things were going as expected until we got to the big bad monster at the end of the adventure, a giant spider. It was at this point one of our players, a druid, said, "Hey, I know speak with animals," and proceeded to cast it. The adventure doesn't have anything written down for what if the PCs can talk to spiders, so our DM was put on the spot. The adventure obviously expected this to be a combat scene, so when we asked the spider, "What do you want?" she had the spider reply, "Death!" And we were like, okay, yeah, that's pretty clear. And we rolled for initiative. Her PCs did something unexpected, and she had to make something up. She looked to the text of the adventure. She saw that the adventure was expecting a combat, so she gave the spider a murder instinct and communicated that to us so we knew exactly how to deal with it. And she even threw in a funny voice in there. It was a small moment, but it was the most memorable part of the night. It's in these moments that we're anxious about, where we don't know what's going to happen, and it's on us to figure it out, where D&D's magic happens. So don't be afraid to take the plunge. Guess we're done with this for now. If I might add one last piece of advice before we go, one that has less to do with how you play the game and more who you play with, D&D is a social experience. And a lot of what makes a session enjoyable is completely independent of what you do as a DM. So find yourself supportive players who are going to be patient with you while you iron out the kinks. Play with people who are there to have fun, but are also fun to have there. And don't be afraid to use this as an opportunity to introduce D&D to your friends. You can have your first time be their first time. That's it. No more excuses. I dub thee Dungeon Master. So go out, find your group, and play your game. I sincerely hope you have a great time.
You know what? The Bishop Sorcerer calls for his mage pawns.
His mage pawns.
Yeah. His sharp voice echoes in the marble chamber. Minions, defend me! Roll for initiative.
Hell yeah.